Hey everybody, what's up? OCD Mikey, Hi-Fi Guy for another edition of the Mikey Show. And today I want to make a quick case for why not to buy used audio gear. And of course, I could do the other side, the case to buy used audio gear, but this is not that one, of course. And so I'm going to tell you why, what the case is, if we're making a case against buying used audio gear. And in many ways, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's quite similar to buying a car. Weird. Sorry about that. My throat. I seem to be losing my voice a little bit this morning, which I don't know. I wasn't yelling yesterday or anything. So it's like this. Look, if you buy a used car, okay, like I've got a car, let's say a 2011. I've got a Volvo, an XC60R design, right? I take care of it meticulously. It always goes to the dealer. It always gets maintained meticulously. I have all the records. Okay. It does not mean that after, that amount of time that there isn't a whole bunch of seals and hoses and belts and things. Belts get typically changed, but seals on things, the seals that are in between, all that stuff gets old. It heat cycles, gets hot, it gets cold, it gets hot, it gets cold. It expands and shrinks, expands and shrinks. Heat cycling takes its toll on everything. Okay. Audio, just like cars. So when you look at, sometimes people will say, okay, well, you definitely don't want to buy a used, whatever, CD player or something like that, right? Because it's got moving parts. Anything with moving parts, the moving parts are going to get worn out, right? So you say, well, buy an amplifier, used. It doesn't matter. There's no moving parts. Not like, speakers have moving parts too, right? Buy an amplifier. It has no moving parts. But the thing is, the amplifier heat cycles like crazy, especially in the case of a Class A or a Class AB. It's going to get hot, cool down, expand, contract, expand, contract, expand, contract. What that means is, unless it is built to a very high level, okay, you can get things where the traces lift up off the board. You can get discoloration. Many times you see where a power resistor is down on the board. If the company didn't have enough foresight to raise that resistor up off the board, it's going to heat the board and you're going to get a brown spot. You look at like old Krell stuff, total heat damage. Okay. Even though they're amazing amplifiers, they're built like strong. If you look at them, they're heat damaged inside, even though they still work. There's heat damage. Okay. And you can tell by brown discoloration of that green PC board. So people have to mod them, go in, raise the power resistors up off the boards, do different things to modify them. Also, an electrolytic capacitor has a duty life. Okay, so those things are only go so long until they dry up or they leak, or the tops of them bubble up. They're not forever type components. These are components that, go bad after a while. So people say, yes, you can recap them. Okay. So I've got an amp that's old that's been recapped. Okay. So that's good because it has been recapped. But what you don't know is who recapped it. Who recapped it and how good at soldering were they, and how good at desoldering, even more important, were they to take the old caps out. If you're pulling a capacitor out of a hole, okay, you got a hold of it with one hand, you got the soldering iron on the other hand, depending on what side the solder pads are on and so forth, if it's through hole plated or if it's not, there's all depends on the build of the board as to how hard it is to desolder. Are they using a desoldering gun that sucks the solder out, which is what I use when I desolder? I have desoldering vacuum. It sucks it out and it's automatic. Brrr. It's not one of those little spring mounted punk, suck the vacuum. It's actually brrr, vacuum sucker. Hey. Anyways, Demento loaf up here. Anyways, so that does a proper way of clearing the hole out, because if that hole, you have to realize that the board is so thick, the solder many times will run through that hole, or at least it goes to the other side. You've got solder on both sides. Then if you pull that up, that you're pulling on one end, if that gets pulled up by somebody without experience, somebody that's impatient, somebody that's trying to get it done quick, is fed up, wants to go to lunch, whatever. You can tear traces. You can damage the PC board when you resolder or rework. It's called rework. When you do rework on a board, you can damage it. I have seen some of the most horrible rework. And typically this happens when people who want to DIY it themselves. Oh, there's a kit to make a BAT VK 55 SE into a VK 75, or I'm sorry, make a VK 75 into a VK 100. What were the monoblocks? I think they were the VK 100s. There's a modification. You could take the stereo tube amp and you could make it into a monoblock, right? And at one point you could get the kit. And if you're real sneaky, you could get it through a dealer and the dealer would get you the kit. They're supposed to put it in, but somehow it would get out into people's hands. They would try and do it, or they give it to the kid in back who's making $15 an hour, put this kit in the BAT and they tear it up. I've seen some, I bought some VK 150s. That's right. You could make a VK 75 into a VK 150 by monoing it, And I bought a pair of VK 150s that someone had done that to. And my God, it was horrid. What they had torn traces. Once you tear a trace off a board, you then have to, if you're not going to replace the whole board, you have to fly a wire. So you have to scrape off the trace, get the solder mask off there, get down to copper, solder a wire, and then jump it over to the leg of the capacitor or wherever you're going. And it's total janky rework. This is the kind of crap that happens in your used gear. So unless you know enough to open the amplifier up and inspect it and look for shitty rework, shoddy rework, you could have completely horrible rework. I have seen, and depending on those caps and how they're done, I've bought before amplifiers where I bought them used. I thought I'm getting a great bargain. And one of the monoblocks has like 3 dB of gain over the left monoblock. And you don't know that unless you measure them in a proper way. If you're just Joe Dude buying used monoblocks and you just throw them in your rig, one of them could be louder than the other and you don't even know it. And you're playing and it sounds great to you because they're new monoblocks and they sound great. But really, your imaging is off because one side is a little bit louder than the other and you don't know that. So there are many pitfalls with used gear. Clearly, a speaker, I don't have to tell you about a speaker. It's got foam surrounds around. It moves back and forth. Okay, so that surround, that's why there's speaker reconing places and why they have surround kits that you can buy to redo the surround because they wear out. So speakers especially are going to get worn out. Wiring inside the speakers, the copper wiring is going to get oxidized after a while. Old wiring is crusty. You really don't want really old wiring inside of things, unless it's in some cases it's okay. In other cases, you can get oxidized copper is not good. If you have silver wiring, it's sulfide, which is conductive, so it's okay with silver. You're pretty much in the clear. But with copper, you're going to get copper oxide. So those things get crustified. Okay, for lack of a better term, you get old crustified audio. Now, that being said, if you buy higher up, you buy old Mark Levinson, you buy old, really well-made stuff, sometimes it doesn't matter. But even then, when you're buying an old Mark Levinson, the transistors and the things that they used were very inefficient back then. The new materials are much more efficient. The new transistors, much higher performance than old transistors. Now, you have to be picky. You can't just take any new transistor and expect it to be better than the old metal, party hats. We used to call them Mexican party hats because they're made in Mexico. They were the old transistors that were the metal can type, right? Those were solid, man. They were built super solid. They're still in use today. You can still find them in old stuff and they still work. But so typically speaking, there are hidden things, okay? Let me put it into plain English. Old equipment equals repairs, okay? So if you don't mind making repairs, you don't mind fixing things, you don't mind sending it and having it measured, making sure they're balanced and all that kind of stuff, which is proper protocol for used equipment, is to have somebody measure it, somebody that knows what they're doing, Measure both sides. Make sure the output is equal on both sides. Okay. If you guys need repair guys, I've got somebody in Minnesota, thanks to David Vanucci, who hooked me up with Jeff Milhop, who is a great repair guy, man. Big heart. I've got somebody down here, Benny Amina, who is a great repair guy. These are guys that really, their heart is in it. And you send it to them, have them measure both sides. Do a checkup when you buy something used. Don't just throw it in and expect it's going to work good. Proper protocol is to have it checked out. It's like a PPI, pre-purchase inspection on a car. Before you buy it, you want to have it fully inspected. If we could do that in Hi-Fi, that would probably be really good. It's going to cost a lot of money. These things are heavy. It's a pain in the ass. So after you add all that stuff in and potential repairs, you might have just been better served spending $4,000 on a Jeff Rowland 125 brand new with full warranty than you would buying something used, getting it for $2,000, and it's an old, big, heavy Class A or Class AB, and it might have cracked seals, right? That's an automotive term. It might have worn out caps or bubbly caps or whatever. So anyways, I'm going too long, man. I want to keep these things shorter. But anyways, so that is, beware of, just realize if you buy used, you're going to most likely encounter repairs. That's part of buying used. That's part of why it costs $4,000 instead of $18,000 for that pair of monoblocks, because there could be issues with them. Okay. So anyways, wanted to make that clear. There is a good case for buying new with warranty, or if you buy used, sometimes you can get a seller that will give you a warranty. If you buy from a certain place, if you buy from me, a lot of times if I'm selling you used Rowland, it gets a full warranty. Okay. I just know the stuff well enough. I know how little it comes back. Rowland has like 0 repairs. Every once in a while with the Class D stuff, I've seen 1 or 2 things come repaired. Jeff fixes it like that, but his AB stuff, 0 repairs ever. Anyways, so thanks for joining. See you guys and gals. See you.